Brandon Walker, it's been almost 3 months since I called you out for your involvement in a viral video instructing children on how to commit suicide. In that time, you have done a near complete online blackout, removing whole accounts beyond simply posts. One thing you haven't done, though, is publicly acknowledge, let alone publicly apologize for anything, especially when it comes to the innocent child that was made the face of that suicide walkthrough video. Last time I said if you deleted things thinking you were going to run away from this, I'd put it all in a video with your name as the title. So here we are. Yet, GuffDump, your news website, went permanently offline 2 days before my video was first released, 3 before it went public. That, along with a lot of other stuff you did, is worth talking about. Because it was actually not just one story that was the problem here, one story being why I took you so seriously. Out of all the articles, there are records of you, Brandon Walker, having had on your website, GuffDump, during its short yet successful run, 50% involved children in some concerning manner, and in increasing frequency. That number goes up to 70% if we don't count articles that are basically just a photo or video with little to no write-up comparatively. One story brought me after you, another is probably what brought down GuffDump, both surrounded by plenty of articles that occasionally made it look like you cared about the well-being and dignity of children, victims. But if that were actually the case, it's hard to believe you would have been as inconsistent and deceitful as you were, mixing in fake stories with real ones, censoring victims and content in some articles and not others. All this in order to prop up your news business and make money, lying to, framing, and/or humiliating people, all in the process of trying to look legitimate and professional yourself. You were two-faced. And if things went wrong, and they did, you were free from the consequences because you were doing all of this anonymously. Well, you thought you were. I mean, you only started to delete accounts within 24 hours of my video calling you out, not while GuffDump was up or right when it went down. Brandon, your lack of both integrity and transparency is alarming, especially when coupled with your skill set and knack for creating successful content, even if it's at the expense of others. Your 3 months of silence are not reassuring. You've done nothing to provide any confidence that you won't try to pull something like this again, if you are not already. I only asked for accountability for one of your stories, one of your worst, because not only would there have been a valuable resource for the public to know the truth about that suicide video, and for that little girl's sake, but with you personally doing it, taking responsibility even if it hurts, that would have said a lot about your own character, especially moving forward. Showing that you can put the hurt you are willing to propagate and/or induce into others before the hurt you created for yourself by hurting said others, especially children. But you haven't done any of that, and you should be ashamed. If you won't even confront one serious mess up, why should anybody trust that you would stop making them, given your selfish and financial motives? You're avoiding responsibility quite effectively, and it'd be very easy for you to just start over again, being more careful this time, especially with no public accountability. I can't stop you, I can't make you take responsibility or apologize, but I can put your name on your work. I am the only one who can. I have all the evidence. I'm going to be covering that 70%, all the articles involving children, contextualizing my criticisms here, showing people what I saw. Walk them through my thought process and experience, because you have refused to do that in any capacity, on your own terms, with all that time. I will still keep that invitation open, but now you might have a bit more work. And if you really care about the children, and this was not all just for the money and laughs, you should. Otherwise, at least own up to that. Over the past few months, I have been scripting and working, saving up money to compensate for the fact that I'm probably going to be demonetized calling out Brandon again, especially after another large investment of time on my part. So I'm prepared this time, because when I cover children's issues, Brandon, it's not about the money. I will gladly take a loss. I could have got a lot done in that time, almost 3 months, but I have been determined to follow through, even if it's hard. Because I believe that this is the right thing to do. And now that I can just afford it, whatever I might make from this video and the last, I will be donating. There is a lot more to this story. For people new to this issue or want to recap on my last video where all of this started, I called out a man of the name Brandon Walker for releasing a video explaining how encouraging and threatening children to commit suicide by slitting their wrists. That video would capitalize on then recent Momo Challenge fears that would go on to make an innocent child the face of said suicide walkthrough video that would go on to be seen by millions. plenty of whom found their way to Brandon's website, GuffDump, but most will never know its backstory. The earliest verifiable evidence of the video's existence was established by Brandon Walker himself, claiming to have found it on 4chan, as stated on Brandon's uploaded copy onto YouTube. Only instead of blurring out the little girl's face, he felt the need to put his website's watermark on it, GuffDump. Once the video went viral, and it didn't take long, he wrote an article over it on GuffDump itself, left out the original 4chan story, deleted his YouTube copy, and blamed YouTube for this, at least in his original version. Due to just about every freeboot having his watermark, even getting airtime on the news, it indicated that he was the source for almost everybody's copy, and subsequently his article blew up in popularity. Something he was so comfortable with, he started to sell copyright infringing t-shirts with the Momo character, aka Motherbird, on them, advertised in the article itself next to normal ads. Brandon remained anonymous on his website, but I eventually tracked down his identity. He has the editing capabilities to have made the video. His last public video he took credit for, released only a month before he posted the suicide walkthrough video he allegedly found, it uses the same exact effects. When I did confront Brandon via Facebook over some of this, he lied to me about having any knowledge of the suicide video, let alone any association with GuffDump or Retrofeed, all while having Retrofeed content he took credit for on the very Facebook account I was talking to him through, Retrofeed being the YouTube channel he uploaded the suicide video on, and Retrofeed originally being linked up as GuffDump's Facebook page, a place that has shared GuffDump articles. Doing all this shady stuff, it's not surprising as to why he would want to be anonymous. He used fear and this little girl to lie to the public, potentially endanger children in the process to scare adults to boost traffic, all in order to grow his brand and ultimately make money. And that's just one story. But I still wanted to give him a chance to come clean in the event that he was just more rash than intentionally nefarious, which I suppose could still be the case. I recommended he apologize publicly to the little girl and her family, update his articles and such to clarify his involvement with the video, especially given that his watermark was so widespread that it was still bringing people to his website. And I asked Brandon to be a more empathetic and considerate person moving forward. Would he use that call out to become a better person or not? That is still up in the air. If you would like to know more about the whole situation in much greater detail, check out my last video, link in the description. Again, he's gone quiet. Almost 3 months, and nothing to show he is sorry. No one else but me to show the backstory. If this disgusting video that Brandon most likely made, but at the very least personally propelled to go viral for the benefit of his business, millions of people have seen that video. A video that is going to be online forever with a backstory he is making harder to find at the expense of an innocent child he took advantage of. Avoiding all this so he doesn't have to personally deal with any of it in real life. If Brandon can do that, it's not fair that he can just delete his stuff and abandon any association with his work. Especially given that he was in the business of documenting people and their wrongdoings for his website, for better or worse. With an emphasis on instances where people targeted and or harmed children, along with kids themselves doing questionable things. Yet the moment Brandon Walker is caught and called out for targeting children himself, he drops everything and hides, seemingly holding himself to a completely different standard than the very people he covered in some of his articles, even in the case of fake stories. Brandon's first child-related article, I'm going to try to cover these in the order he made them, was about a man of the name Quentin Brown. He was supposedly living in the walls of a woman's house in Baltimore, Maryland, taking photos of her young daughter for 3 whole years, many of which Brandon claims were pornographic in nature. When I looked up the homeowner, a Linda Cronchi, there were literally only 2 results: GuffDump itself and some Facebook page that shared the GuffDump article. I actually couldn't find anything verifying the story, and I tried a number of searches. When I finally resorted to doing a reverse image search on the photo of the man Brandon used, it was linked to just GuffDump and an inmate list using a subdomain through Blogger. The photo is of a Robert Kennemer, not Quentin Brown. Though Robert has his own problems, Brandon seemed to post an extreme and seemingly fake story crafted around this man, capitalizing on his appearance. I mean, one-eyed man? Where did you really get this story and photo from, Brandon? This is why it's important to look up sources on articles and to expect transparency from the authors. I guess Brandon owes another apology. Last time, I didn't call Brandon out on everything. That little girl and her issue was my primary focus. But my guess is Brandon didn't want other people to have the chance to call him out too. God forbid his life is personally disturbed by what he's done. But Brandon has removed things before. There's at least one story Brandon appears to have taken down before I even found him. On Reddit, where Brandon linked to another one of his Guff Dump articles, this one over a West Virginian ghost cat with a made-up backstory which I established in my last video. In the comments section though, there were people critical of stories on the website. One notable critique being that Brandon had an article about children being used as bait to feed pit bulls used for dogfights. That is horrifying, yet Brandon seems to have removed it. Why? If that was real, wouldn't he want people to know about that? I couldn't verify that story anywhere with the few details available. That said, considering that he would have a fake story pinning horrific crimes on a man innocent of them, why would Brandon take the dog one down? It would not even be his most extreme article. Brandon's story is worth covering for a number of reasons. One being that his actions seem to sit right in the range of issues he would cover himself. Which is why I want people to see his work, know where I'm coming from, holding him to some of his own standards, if they're real, which will become more clear as we work our way to the final story. The next article was the suicide walkthrough video, where Brandon put the spotlight on a horrible issue with complete disregard for the child. But if this story is so important to Brandon, he should recognize that he is part of it and deserves some spotlight too, given that he, not YouTube, was the main culprit in his story. I already covered a lot of this, but there is more. This is where Brandon would find a whole new level of success covering stories about children. A taste of success which made me uneasy given his lies. Beyond the extreme possibility that he almost certainly made the video to report on, especially given his behavior after I called him out, he was trying to milk this video for all it's worth either way. Again, making merchandise for the story. Who does that? He would go on to update his article a few times with more information over the story, even deleting comments in the process. Though he was being disingenuous in his coverage and updates, seemingly to distance his role from the video, going as far as to use a small Facebook page called Black Now that Brandon is seemingly the owner of to host a high quality copy of the suicide video rather than host it on his site like the other video here. It makes it look like he just found a random copy somewhere and reported on that. But how can he explain this copy being the only copy of the suicide video without his watermark on it I have ever seen? Uploaded to Black Now the same day he updated his article, a day or so after he made the original version, as can be seen by now deleted tweets over it, and the dates for photos he used for the original version. That said, there were older, more popular copies all over of that suicide video, all of which had his watermark on it. Even his original version before he deleted it had more views than the Black Now version. What was on the Facebook page before it was rebranded, by the way? It doesn't seem like it was always Black Now. Is Brandon impersonating a member of the Black community? That would be weird because Brandon's photos of himself show that he is white. And what's with this fake video saying that Tom Cruise is in negotiations to lead in a new Black Panther movie because of China? Though I really gotta say, that Momo video really seems out of place here, and a little too convenient. And with all these accounts, a dash of rebranding, all tied to Brandon, it seems he was trying to have some sort of successful breakthrough. And given the drastic increase of articles incorporating children after the suicide video article, it seems that he's the type of person who will capitalize on success, shady or not. Which is why Black Now should be questioned if he is affiliated with it. Now, with all that said, take note that Brandon is willing to update articles to provide more details on a situation and delete comments. Again, this article would become extremely popular in comparison to his other stuff. But with this small break, Brandon would actually go on to try something new. The following articles are all real, but they come across as, well, inconsistent. The following day, Brandon made an article covering Imagine Dragons' Dan Reynolds responding to criticism after being called the new Nickelback, while also talking about people hating on the band. Reynolds briefly questioned the idea of kids being seen as not cool for listening to the band's music, and if his kids will one day be made fun of if they did. As mentioned, this story is real, but Brandon seems to have sloppily thrown it together. I mean, Imagine Dragons? Brandon only had 3 sentences and he couldn't even be bothered to proofread them. The first story that was verifiably not something Brandon made up involving kids was Brandon's lowest effort article out of all the child-related articles that I was able to come across. Even the fake ones. and it felt out of place even if you didn't know about the fakes. Why this immediate shift to verifiably real and popular events the following day? Why such a toned-down story given the extreme nature of the two child-related articles Brandon still had on GovDump? And most of all, why emphasize the bullying of children part of Reynolds' reply, going as far as to make it the title, when his remarks themselves mostly emphasized Reynolds' frustration with the band being constantly criticized while he remained silent? The title even misrepresents Reynolds' point. He wonders if his kids will be made fun of, not that he fears kids will be made fun of in general. I mean, Brandon didn't even expand on that topic of children being bullied for liking the band in the write-up, if that was something he wanted to explore. Coming off of two comparatively detailed heavy articles, this draws attention to itself. To me, it looks like after the suicide video Brandon had a hand in, he covered this to add a sense of authenticity and reliability to his work on the site. Brandon's just covering stories he's finding, and he wants people coming to his site from that suicide video to know he's worried about the kids, and that his site really cares about bullying and inciting violence. That's how it looks, given his deceptive track record, because he himself was actually bullying Mr. Kennemer, and literally inciting violence with that suicide video. Feel free though, Brandon, to clear the record if that's actually not the case. I am more than willing to hear you out if you want to walk me through your reasoning and thought process behind any of this. That said, his following article made his coverage about bullying and violence definitely seem a bit tone deaf, even without knowledge of the lies. Brandon would release the whole first episode of 2002's Bum Fights on YouTube with an accompanying article on GovDump. Also, Brandon, uploading that video was illegal without permission of the copyright holder. Did you have that? This film has been banned in multiple countries. eBay won't even sell it. It involves kids, teenagers, taking advantage of homeless people, including notably a homeless Vietnam War vet, Donald Brennan, to do humiliating and dangerous stunts for little bits of money at a time, targeting yet another vulnerable group in society. It has high school fights, kidnapping homeless people, tons of shady stuff. I understand the cult following and the cultural impact, but it seems odd considering the last post. Brandon even acknowledged some of the criticisms surrounding the film, but he personally put it out there for people, telling anyone who may watch to enjoy. Beyond the fact that Brandon was likely breaking the law yet again, the enjoy part was really off-putting. It was hard to get a read on Brandon at this point. What truly bothers him? What are the reasons for doing all this, if not money? One moment he seems to be picking stories because he's concerned about safety and how people are being treated. And then in another, he's inconsistent, telling people to enjoy watching the opposite of that. Knowing about the fake stuff makes this even more strange. Next we have Brandon making an article over high schoolers who made racist and anti-Semitic remarks in a minute-long video with, whatever thumbnail this is. Wow, he put more effort into that than the write-up. Here's a case of Brandon covering a small yet offensive issue, taking the video for himself to preserve on his website. Oh, and make money from it. On top of that, Brandon was censoring curse words on the article, which was an interesting and noteworthy choice. Does he personally disapprove of such strong language? And/or is he just upholding some sort of professional appearance for GovDump? Is his censoring a way to make it look like he disapproves of such language? That said, here is another case of Brandon saying little to nothing on another real matter that he seems to have some sensitivity towards if he's covering it. Why cover it then, if not to make money and/or force accountability on the kids by preserving their mess up? Do you condemn what these kids are saying, Brandon? If no, why would you do this to them and put on this massive charade? If yes, well, things are about to get more awkward. Censorship was becoming more important, and it seemed to indicate a degree of consideration. But whether to keep up appearances so he could keep lying, or because Brandon really cares about the obscene or actual victims themselves, that was a hard question to figure out at the time. But Brandon would take his investigating skills and really turn it up a notch for the next story. Brandon's second to last article he covered was about a man who committed super aggravated sexual assault on a 3-year-old, giving her an STD. This is real. That man is undeniably disgusting. But why another story about an adult black man and pedophilia, especially considering the other story is fake? Here, Brandon took the liberty to snoop around this guy's Facebook page for evidence, taking all kinds of pictures, mostly of the guy and the little girl he hurt, for GovDump, his article. 18 of the man and 15 of the little girl he hurt. That's a lot. Others being inappropriate cartoons I can't show. That is if Brandon isn't faking some of that too. Regardless, here Brandon was actually blurring out the face of the victim. He doesn't want to humiliate the child any further, right? But he would miss one photo of her, showing her face, and did a poor job in a few others. Also, oddly, the man himself has been discolored in the article. Why is that, Brandon? It's not like that elsewhere. Is he not bad enough already? Though he still felt the need to sell his copyright infringing t-shirts over the suicide video here. Ugh. But that effort to blur out the child here, that was important. Now, for the timeline. I would learn Brandon's identity on March 12th. I would go on to change the last video from a Guff Dump callout to a Brandon Walker callout. I got evidence from his Facebook page because I guess that's fair game if it's relevant. And while I was still there, I still wanted to give him a chance to explain himself before I refilmed a few shots. So I would message him on late March 14th, and he got back to me early March 15th. He lied to me, blocked me, and then I went over to his site to check it out. I saw a new story, his last story. It brought everything to a whole new level. About 4 hours after it happened, and just before he got back to me on March 15th, Brandon made an article and posted the whole Facebook video of the New Zealand Christchurch terrorist attack on Guff Dump. Now, here's a guy who has been starting to censor swear words and even some victims themselves on his site. Yet, there he was, with an article that has a thumbnail of people literally being shot at in the corner of the room. An article with a video that shows a terrorist attack where not only 50 people were brutally killed in plain view or would later die from their injuries, but of that, 4 children. Not to mention the 50 or so adults and kids that were injured. Why is that video okay with a horrible thumbnail, but not curse words? You know enough to censor casual photos of a baby girl who was raped, but you can show actual footage of people, children, literally being murdered. What was Brandon doing? If this wasn't some pathetic attempt to grow his shady business capitalizing on exclusive footage he had over this horrific event, then what was it? Was he actually going to be some fringe journalist this time, willing to cover the harsh realities of this story in a detailed, objective manner? Would he keep updating the article, like in the past, over the ongoing situation? A lot of people were tuning into his website now. Would he be careful not to further humiliate these victims? All I could do is watch. Guff Dump would crash from the traffic soon after I found the article. People were sharing his website all over, including some of Brandon's own personal friends. I found a Reddit post where someone criticized one of Brandon's friends for sharing that Guff Dump article. When Brandon did finally bring the website back up hours later, he updated the story. Only, instead of adding new information over the ongoing situation in New Zealand, given that kids were now known to be involved, Brandon only added a video with a section of the terrorist attack synced up to the status bar from the 1993 game Doom. Once the shooter killed the man who tackled him, it acted like the shooter completed a level. And I hope you did not make that too. Brandon was hosting that video on his article for people to watch just under the story, still using information from the first 4 hours after the attack. That section of the original video used for that clip will be the one where all 4 kids that died were shot at, still not censoring anything. How could you cover so much over children, censoring them now, while feeling comfortable showing literal footage of them being killed in plain view, while having the audacity to show footage mocking it? I guess saying it's unfortunate that it exists gets you off the hook for literally showing it. The comment section was an absolute mess, as anyone could imagine. But clearly not worth curating like on your other articles covering the suicide walkthrough video targeting children. Comments similar in terms of the hate you made an article over, the one with the kids. And this was the last version of Brandon's article covering the terrorist attack on his website before the site went down for good. So the story was up for about 2 days, unchanged, with no further effort added. And no doubt his website was probably shut down due to that article, or the traffic took down the site and my call-out video convinced Brandon to permanently keep it down. What a mess. We live in a world where we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say, not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those people my heroes. That quote is from Mr. Fred Rogers, a man who has had a profound impact on my life. By sheer coincidence, the day Brandon uploaded that suicide video and the day my call-out video went public just so happened to be Mr. Rogers' death date and birth date, respectively. Brandon made it look like he cared about children, that he was taking part in that responsibility and responding to the issues. But his actions would show otherwise. There are other problems with what he's done, no doubt. But it's one issue in particular, this targeting and humiliating children. That is what started this for me, and it has bothered me the most. What started out with an innocent little girl whose face was put in a suicide walkthrough video, literally telling children how to kill themselves, ended with a video of people, and most notably children, being murdered by a terrorist in a video that made it look like a game that was mocking it. Brandon, this was not simply trolling. You were trying to grow a shady business while you had the best of both worlds. You wanted to make it look like you were helping, while you also targeted and humiliated people. It's one thing to actually not care about the people you are willing to cover. You could have at least been transparent. But maybe you shouldn't be in the news business, because it doesn't give me any confidence that you won't do this again. You only backed off taking multiple things down when it actually impacted you. When I called you out, not when Guff Dump went down before my video came out. And that's why videos like this are all the more important. But in the event that you do really care, that you are sorry, prove it. I have spent countless hours thinking about how to end this video. Long drawn out closings, combing over everything. It's been overwhelming. So I'm gonna end it like this and shift the tone and the direction a little bit. You messed up, Brandon. Okay, now what? Are you going to take this and not change? Are you going to take this and become a worse person? Or, hopefully, a better one? What is it going to be? It's not the end of the world. There will be a tomorrow, no matter how big of an issue is in front of us individually right now. But for those tomorrows to start getting better, one needs to put in the effort today. I gave you space and time. I have remained mostly silent publicly on anything over the past 3 months. With no journalists, drama YouTube channels, no special attempts on my own behalf to try to get this stuff to go viral. And you did nothing. I have lost a lot of money working on all this. I have been thankful for my father and people on Patreon for having my back. But I didn't do this, put all this together to just dunk on you, make money for myself, and walk away. Not thinking about what this may do to you and the people in your life. But if you want empathy, you also gotta start showing it yourself. I think it's important to encourage people to find some sort of redemption, but you can't just run away from your mistakes like you are. All of this has just been an exhausting commitment, but I'm the only one who could do it, and I would do it all over again because I will put in the effort. Whether that encourages people to change for the better, recognize their mistakes, and become a more empathetic and considerate person moving forward, or whether this just shuts down someone who wouldn't care about the damage they caused to other people any other way, unless they get a little taste of it themselves. That's a tomorrow worth working for right now. Again, if you want empathy, you gotta start showing it yourself. I care about kids. I volunteer to help them out when I get the chance. Maybe you should do something like that too. Actually help people. It's genuinely one of the best feelings ever. And you don't often get people calling you out for it. I don't know what may come of this, but I do hope for one thing. If I ever have to talk about you publicly again, Brandon Walker, I hope it's because I have something good to say. Take control of your legacy. Leave the world better than how you found it, even if it's a little bit. Because right now, Brandon, it looks like you're running a deficit. Take responsibility. Be a helper. Goodbye.